Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 5 of Corporate Cardboard. So this is a board game variety show where we talk about all things to do with board gaming. I'm Dan, and I'm joined, as always, by my esteemed co-host Mackenzie from Side Game LLC. How are you today, Mackenzie?
I'm doing fantastic. It's a great morning here in Colorado Springs. The sun is out. It's shiny. Life is good. How are you, Dan?
Yeah, absolutely fine. Thank you. Really glad to be back doing one of these because it's been a few weeks since the last episode because we've had pretty busy lives this month. So unfortunately, we couldn't get around to doing an episode, but happy to be back. And as always, we welcome your participation. If you are watching the show and you want to throw in a question, throw in a comment, then we'll make sure to highlight it. But let's get started. So as always, the first segment we go into is we're going to talk about what we've been playing this month. So this month I've actually had quite a successful games month of playing stuff. Got a chance to play some old party games that I haven't had the chance to play in a while because some restrictions and things have been lifted in the UK. So we've had some friends together playing the old classics. But I thought I'd talk about some of the ones that have impressed me most this month in terms of more involved games. So I'll start if you're happy, Mackenzie.
Go for it.
So the first game I'm going to talk about is a game called Babylonia, which is actually it's a Reiner Knizia design, and I'm on a bit of a spree going through Knizia games at the moment. And if you're familiar with a certain vein or a certain style of Knizia games, these ones that involve putting tiles or tokens onto the board, and you're trying to basically link things together, you're trying to surround things. Babylonia is in that style. So if you think of games like Through the Desert or games like Samurai or Blue Lagoon, this is very much that style of thing. But there are some subtle differences. And I will say, just to put it out there, I did enjoy this one quite a bit more than those other titles. This one is so simple to play, where you've got a spread of 5 tiles at your disposal, and you are going to be placing them out anywhere on the board, and the board looks absolutely fantastic. And you're trying to do lots of different things. So you're trying to surround the city tokens, look like this, and you're basically whoever surrounds them gets the cities, and the more cities you get, you start to compound points you're gathering. You're also trying to link everything together, because whenever these cities are surrounded, for every tile that you have matching that type of city, you're going to score a certain amount of points for. But alternatively, you can choose to surround these kind of temples called ziggurats. And if you do that, then you are going to be able to claim some of these player powers, which can kind of give you game-breaking abilities, such as just giving you a bunch of points, or giving you more tiles on your rack to use, taking another turn, being able to place more, and that kind of thing. But really versatile game that you can play with pretty much everybody, but a nice deep level of strategy and some really interesting decisions to be made from start to finish in a game that takes about 40 minutes or so. So really happy with that one. Have you played any of these style of games, Mackenzie, that
So I've seen a lot of them. Like Blue Lagoon was big for a while. Do Tigris and Euphrates or Yellow and Yangtze follow in this category as well, or?
Kind of. I would say that they are maybe a bit of a step above in terms of ways you score, things like that. But yeah, I suppose you could say that some shared DNA. But I think if you played, as I said, those particular games that I mentioned, they have a real similar feel to them, and just slight differences between them.
Gotcha. Is this the newest version of that system? And I like this player power idea. Are these variable each game you play?
I think this is the newest one, unless he's come out with another one since, because he's known for putting lots of games out. But yeah, this is the latest one, at least I'm aware of. And the powers, they are the same from game to game. There are a couple more you can choose to add in should you want to, which I think are a bit too powerful. Which basically means that when you start to connect cities, you see like these big sea areas. That kind of counts as your land, basically. So you can actually connect your tiles from one side of the sea to the other without actually having to place tokens there. So I think, personal taste, I've decided not to inject that into the games that I play, because I think it's a bit of an obvious one to go for.
Gotcha. It sounds like the heroes in something like Nidavellir, where they're just all available, but you can kind of pick and choose the game you want to play based on removing. That's a cool system. I like it. So this game looks really pretty. What do you think the best player count on this one is?
I've only played this at 2 and 3. I did prefer the 3 counts to the 2 because I thought the 2 you are a bit more able to do your own thing without having to step on each other's toes. Whereas in the 3, it's pretty much unavoidable that you are going to get in each other's way. However, the board is scaled depending on the player count. So, in a 2-player game, I think only the 2 smallest islands are used. In a 3-player game, only the 2 biggest islands are used. And in a 4-player game, everything's used. So it does scale in terms of its tightness, in terms of who you're playing it for, or how many players you're playing it with. So yeah, really happy with that one, and it's staying in the collection.
Hey, that's high praise there. Awesome. So the first big game that I've played recently. So as in our last episode, we had just started Frank Con. So I did a big kind of dump and review of all the games that we played and covered there. But I want to talk about the games that we started playing after we got back. So when I went on this big trip and we've been doing a lot of traveling, but since we've been back, we basically collected all of these games that have just been here waiting to be played since we've been gone. So 3 weeks of mail, I got a lot of games in, and there are 2 games left on the shelf that are unplayed. So I know I have unplayed games, which is crazy for me, but I'm getting through stuff. But one game that we have been really enjoying has been Oath, Chronicles of Empire in Exile. So this game is super fascinating. The core of it is a living game. So every time you play it, the way the game ends is going to affect how the next game's set up. Think something like Maracaibo, where it's got that story that progresses, but as opposed to Maracaibo, where the story is based on a deck of cards, this is based on the way that the game has actually been played. So if during my game I control a bunch of area and I win, all that area that I've controlled is going to stay on the board, as well as each card on those places. And based on who you win as, you get to do specific things. If you win as the Chancellor, which is the ruling class, then you get to build these edifices and these giant new buildings. So in this last game, I won and I got to build this giant festival district, and I thought that was really cool. But say somebody else wins, they can burn down your existing edifices. So in the game before that, somebody burnt down my structure, and it just became this awful slum. So the game itself is gorgeous, though, and it's a Cole Wehrle design. So it's kind of obtuse when you first look at it, but the game is very simple and very flowing. It's more of a tableau builder than anything. On your turn, you can interact using action points, and I think the action point system is very clever, as you are not forced to spend all of them every turn. And everything you don't spend, you get to save for the next turn. So it really helps with alleviating your analysis paralysis, because you don't have to spend everything. You can really plan and take your time, and the more you play the game, the more apparent that is. And I really enjoy the tableau system, where you're either keeping things in your hand for personal use, or you're putting them on the board, and when you do, you generally are going to get some immediate benefit, but whoever owns that region is actually going to have access to those cards, or whoever's there at the time. So I think it's really fascinating, where you kind of have multiple hands, which I think is really sweet, and there's lots of ways to interact, lots of different win conditions. It's just a really fantastic, really interesting design, and this sports some of the best artwork I've seen in a game. I love the whole aesthetic of this. I love this really weird world that's been made. I had somebody describe it to me as Muppets meets Adventure Time meets Game of Thrones, and I just can't get that out of my head. I think it's so wonderful, and it's one that I've really been enjoying. But Dan, I know this has been out in the UK for a while now. Have you played this one yet?
No, I haven't played it. I've not actually played any of these leader games. I don't know what it is that's stopping me from playing them. I just noticed on the front page there of the Board Game Geek page that it says it's nearly got a 4 out of 5 weight. You're saying it's a relatively simple game. Do you think that's fair rating?
I think the 4 out of 5 is a fair rating, because there's a lot of small things, and I think those pile up. But the game itself is really easy. On your turn, you move, you summon troops, you can get a relic, you can draw cards, or you can fight. Those are the 5 things you could do. So it's a very simple actions, but think something like a Lacerda game, where, yeah, you got 4 actions, but each of those actions has lots of steps, and there are lots of little things that can happen between those steps, and understanding how they all relate is huge. So your first game of this is probably going to be a little rough. Most of these games are. So this falls similarly to things like Pax Pamir 2nd Edition and Root, in my opinion. These are other Cole Wehrle designs, where that first time you play, you're going to be like, okay, I got it now. And then the next time you play, you'll be like, okay, now I actually have an idea of what's going on. But all those little things you keep in mind as you're playing those simple actions. And I think that's what is the beauty of the game. It's simple mechanics, but really, I would say more esoteric gameplay, where it's a little bit hard to wrap your head around, but it's something that is definitely worth that second play because it really changes. So I would strongly recommend this one. But honestly, it's not my favorite out of everything, but it's up there. So I think I definitely prefer Pax Pamir over this one. I think that one is a little bit more accessible, but I love this growing system, and it's one that's really it's contending there for me. I really enjoyed this one.
Okay, cool. Tim, thanks for joining us as always. Tim's just made a comment saying he's wanted to look into Oath, but he doesn't want to accidentally like it and buy it. Yeah, I think we're all in the same boat. But yeah, so it looks like Leader Games have kind of created a little bit of a niche for themselves. They've got a bit of a harmonious look to their games, and it seems like people are really enjoying it at the moment. So they're kind of firing on all cylinders. Okay, so let's go on to the next game I've been playing then. So the next game I've been playing and enjoying, actually played this yesterday. This one is In the Hall of the Mountain King. Now this is, it's kind of, I'll describe it as a midweight Euro. It's certainly more involved to say it was anything lighter than that, and it's relatively simple in what this game does. It's a kind of a tile placement style game as you are kind of digging into this volcano, trying to create all these paths, trying to discover these statues and put these statues on these different plinths to get victory points. The closer to the heart of the volcano, you're going to score more points at the end of the game. And you're basically trying to manage your resources in order to map these tunnels out, etc. Trying to cut through this kind of coarser rock that's hard to get through. You need to have tools. So I think thematically, I think this game works really well. I love the premise of one. I think it's something a bit different. But the thing that I really like about this game, and I imagine you would really appreciate this, Mackenzie, if you haven't played this game, is this resource, or the kind of the method you get your resources is absolutely fascinating. This is actually just how you draft your cards, but I'll see if I can find a picture of how you actually gather your resources in the first place.
So I've heard this described as a cascading resource system. Can you go a little bit more in detail on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's what I'm referring to. So basically, in front of you, you're going to start acquiring these different cards, which have different resources on, as you can see here. But you're going to start with 4 of them, which are your kind of basic cards. And as you acquire more and more of these cards, you are going to basically put them on top of the existing cards and get all the resources from that card, not only on that one, but also the ones below it as well. And as you're doing this, the actual resources themselves stay on the cards, so that you haven't actually got the kind of capacity to store anything more unless you start spending them. And you are forced to take one of 2 decisions, which is to either buy a new card and again trigger all your resources gathering up, or you are going to have to actually build a tunnel. But again, if you don't have all the resources you need, then you're going to have to start a new or place a new card on your board, again making all the resources cascade down, and potentially wasting your storage, because if there's stuff already there, then you can't get double on there. You can only keep what it can keep. So for example here, with this top card being placed, everything underneath it is also going to fill up with the resources if there's not already a resource on there. You have got a kind of a separate storage space that is independent, where you can hold things. But this actual system is amazing. It is so clever. You've got kind of 3 different types of minerals, which is your kind of rarer bricks. You've got your kind of medium ones and your more common ones, which will give you different points depending on which you use. But you've also got these like essences as well, or I don't know what they're called, verbatim, but you stick them on these power cards, and these power cards can give you these great game-breaking rules. And I love the way that these power cards are kind of common knowledge. There's 3 out available at all times that anybody can use, but as soon as that card's used for the 3rd time, then you are going to get rid of that card and replace it with a new one. So some of these powers are really cool, such as being able to replace your level 2 cards with more powerful level 3 ones, or being able to break through the harder rock, like loads of them at a single time with just one tool, where normally you'd have to use a tool for every single rock you're trying to break. And it just comes together so well, and it's just an absolute breeze to teach, because the rules themselves are simple, but it's the order in which you're doing things, the order in which you're taking your actions can be actually really quite paralyzing, and has a lot to sink your teeth into. So really impressed with this one, and yeah, I'm just so happy I put it in my collection now, because I think I'm going to get a lot more fun out of this game.
Okay, so I have a friend that owns this. I think that this will be one that I'll need to try. Just the cascading system itself sounds interesting. I'd love to get that a swing. The gameplay, I have heard from some people that it's kind of weird how like you can cut people off early game, or you can like divert paths from turn 1. But I think I'd have to see it first, because I think that could be a thing in most games. So I don't think would be super crazy. But just the resource system in general sounds fun, and I like the idea of having those bonuses that are changing throughout. That sounds really cool.
Yeah, it is. I don't really have concerns in that way, to be honest. And just another thing as well, the volcano, you see in the center is worth the more points if you pull those statues to those spaces. But the outer rim, although it's the real kind of, the cheaper style of rock that you're breaking through, and going to be less points if you have your statues there, but by investing in actually building there, you've got loads of kind of resources built into that rock. So if you build your tunnels into them, it's a way to get even more resources into your supply to be able to use. But I was really happy with it, and yeah, impressed. Tim's also said that he's wanted to try it. He doesn't like the warish type game. Tim, I would actually alleviate your concerns and say this game hasn't got a war style feel to it at all. It's just about discovering things and dragging statues into the middle of the volcano. Okay.
I'm curious to know if he's talking about Oath still on that one.
Oh, okay. Apologies. You might be right there.
No worries. Sweet. All right. Then the next game that I've been playing a lot. I actually was on my honeymoon recently. So during traveling, I do like to bring a couple games with me. And one of the games that I really enjoy bringing is Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. Now, the reason it's so good is you can play it anywhere. So this is one that you can bring in a car with you. You can bring in a plane because you're literally just reading. And this is something that you can both interact with and talk out. And it's a conversational piece. And I really enjoy that aspect of this game. Now, in particular, I want to talk about the Jack the Ripper cases. So we've completed that 4-part mini campaign, and I really enjoyed it. It had its ups and downs. So my favorite part of it had to be the all historically based stuff. I thought that was so fascinating, getting the little tidbits of information after each of the cases. I'm not going to cover any spoilers here, but you have all these little tidbits of things that happened at the time and why the case was designed this way. And I think that's so cool. I think it's so fascinating. So everything is rooted in this history, the different theories that were available at the time, and the new theories that have been made based on years of research and looking into different eyewitness reports. It's super fascinating. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. Now, the one thing, my one criticism is a lot of the times I had no idea what we were actually going to be looking for. Because if you are unaware of the Jack the Ripper and West End Jack the Ripper cases in general, it's basically the murder of a woman. And this woman generally was a prostitute of some sort. And this person was found dead somewhere. And so that's how each case starts, and they just kind of let you loose. So sometimes it's kind of hard to understand what you're actually trying to do. And so I did find that a little bit tricky, but the more we played, the more we were like, oh, we should probably be looking for this, or maybe this is the ulterior motive. So it became kind of a fun challenge as to saying, I wonder what our real purpose here is. So, really fascinating, great historical context, and I think it's a great take on the Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective theme, or the, I guess, system. And so far, this is the box that I'm enjoying the most, I think, out of all of the Sherlock Holmes cases. So that includes the standalone and this campaign. So I really like this. Have you got a chance to dive into any of these cases yet, Dan?
Not these particular ones. I have got one of the boxes of Consulting Detective. I think I'm about just over halfway through it, but I really enjoy the game. It's one of those games that I just sit back and enjoy the process. I don't try to beat Sherlock. He seems to be pretty impossible to beat. I mean, do you try to be competitive and try to do the best you can?
We try to do the best we can. So there are points where you're just like getting dead lead after dead lead. I've only really experienced that recently in the, I forget what the name of it is, but it's the blue one. It's the second newest expansion. It has like a house, the Carlton House, something like that. We get demolished in that one. There's just way too many things to look at. But our first case in this one, actually, we beat Sherlock, and we couldn't believe it. We had just like gone high on playing a bunch of these detective games, and we crushed it. We were so impressed with ourselves. And then, of course, we play one right afterwards and get demolished again by Sherlock. So we're just like, oh my gosh, this is so ridiculous. So I think it's a little bit of luck and a little bit of foreplanning, but we definitely always try to do our best.
Okay, cool. Yeah, really enjoy the game. It's been in my collection for a long time, and yeah, never kind of not in the mood to play it. Really, it's a really, especially for couples and things, as you said. Okay, cool. Detective. Okay, so the next game is another Euro style game. Thought I'd pick these games this month. I'm going to talk about probably the most Euro of the Euro games you'd probably ever see, the most beige, most brown and boring looking game, at least to most. This is Vasco de Gama. Now, Vasco de Gama is, I suppose, quite synonymous with what you'd expect from Euro. You are trying to get ships, you're trying to fill these ships with crew members and sail them off to explore the new world, trying to score points in lots of different ways. This is a game that's quite old now, 12 years old. But it's by Paolo Mori, and Paolo Mori is a pretty revered board game designer at this point. Made a lot of great titles and lots of different types of games as well. So yeah, as I said, this game is pretty simple on the face of it. From a face value, you are just doing those things. It's pretty linear in terms of just getting your crew members, getting your ships, and sending them off to these different places to get victory points. But the core system of this game is really fascinating and something I haven't ever seen before, which is based on this grid of numbers in the center of the table. So basically, before you even take any of these actions, you are going to basically draft for these different numbers, which is going to determine your initiative order. So, the number 1 is going to be the first action to be resolved. The number 20 is going to be the last action to be resolved. But, you might think, why don't I just take all the lower numbers because I'm going to go first all the time? Well, the reason for that is because randomly, from round to round, you are going to place a marker randomly on one of these numbers, and usually it could be really low, it could be somewhere in the middle, but that's almost it's not perfect information on where that is. But that marker is going to say anything below that number is going to start costing you money to take those initiative tokens. So if the base market is an 8, if you want to take a number 6 initiative, you're going to have to pay the difference of 2 in order to take that. And once everyone's selected all of their actions and placed them on these different spots, you are going to resolve them in initiative order. But that kind of placeholder marker is going to fluctuate. So you're going to draw the next tile, and that's going to move it up or down X number of spaces. So that could mean that everything is going to wrap up to 3 coins more expensive, or even make things cheaper. So you could take a gamble and say, I will place it on this, but I've got a feeling that it might get cheaper, and therefore I'm going to go faster, and it's not even going to cost me too much money. If it goes the other way, you might completely leave yourself backed into a corner and not actually have the funds to take the actions that you've already placed. So it's really fascinating how that works, and it really is that key mechanism. And also bearing in mind the order in which you have to resolve these things is important, because if you start taking the action space in the top left-hand corner to actually place these boats onto the map, and you don't have the crew members yet, then you've basically wasted an action. So you have to bear in mind the order in which these things are going to trigger on, as well as wanting to get the low initiative to beat your opponents to get the things that you want. And on top of all that, you've got this these powers that you can get with all these different characters. And they give you nice subtle little bonuses you can take, such as being able to take an extra action but having a really low initiative, or being able to generate these kind of, not wild workers, but another resource of workers, and different things like that, or just generating points from round to round. And the cool thing is you can have all of these workers if you want to, all these additional powers. So you can really stockpile on having all these powers at once and getting real big meaty turns if your opponents choose to neglect it. But really happy with this one. I thought it actually went down really well. I played with actually my brother and my mum, who's not a hardcore gamer, and you probably think, not into this style of game, but it actually resonated really well, and it was a hit. So Vasco de Gama.
Whoa! So I've heard of this game, and I haven't played a lot of Paolo Mori's games. I've heard of a lot of things. Blitzkrieg. The only one I think I've played from him is actually his take on Pandemic: The Fall of Rome. But this system reminds me a lot of Age of Empires 3: Age of Discovery by Glenn Drover. So this
Okay.
is the very similar system where you're going to be placing those characters out and then resolving based on turn order. But I think this is really cool that turn order bidding is for that whole round.
Mm.
That's kind of wild. So I think as you said, it's important for a reason, and there's a reason it's going to cost so much. But that fluctuation sounds really intense. Holy cow! In this game,
Yeah.
do you feel that it's just super tight for money the whole time, or how do you feel?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, that's definitely one of the things I took away, was that you are really scraping for your coins in this game. And if you do end up, backing yourself into a corner where you can't resolve the action because you can't afford it, you can just choose to cash in that token for a number of money, but it's going to be worth less money if you take the lower actions. So it's again a real small, subtle little rule there that just adds a little bit of spice to the game, and it just worked for me.
This is so cool. This is awesome. I'm glad that it's so accessible, but still having those interesting decisions. That's
Yeah.
great. Great. All right. So my last game that I'm going to talk about this morning is this super weird game. So this is probably the most funky game I've played in a while. It's called Solomon Kane. So this thing's been like 4 years in the making. I remember seeing it on Kickstarter a long time ago, and I decided not to get it at the time. But I had an opportunity to get it to the full all-in. So I said, you know what? It's getting some positive reviews. Let's jump in on it. And I'm super impressed. This is probably one of the best storytelling games. So it's based off of the Solomon Kane novels, and it takes all of its writing straight from the source material, or so it seems. And so each game has you playing in this giant spiral-bound storybook. And I shouldn't say giant. There are several pages, but the brilliance of this is each of these storybooks has extreme amounts of branching paths. So you pick a story that you want to play, and then each player that's playing takes a virtue. So you don't actually play as Solomon Kane. You kind of play as his conscience, or these like virtues that are influencing him, because he is this devout Christian, and he's basically trying to keep the world pure. But sometimes he'll give in to his inner darkness, and so your job is to keep him on the correct path. So it's kind of funky because you play as this guardian and this arbiter. You kind of push him in the right direction, so you're influencing his actions. If you play the solo mode, you play as a single one, but when you play multiplayer, you're going to play with 4 of them, and so it's really interesting. You're kind of managing where these characters are on the board. So as you can see, this board here, it is a dice-driven game. So on your turn, you'll roll 3 dice, and you'll use those to either activate the cards in front of you, to activate the spirits that no one's playing. So those are kind of like neutral powers you can use, or you can even give them to your opponents or reserve them for future turns. So this game is one long story, though. So everything you do, everything you kind of charge, you stack up, you can save from chapter to chapter in the story. So you have these small minor chapters that you're going to be using to kind of build up Kane's stats and your own personal board. And then in future chapters, you're going to kind of see those fruits of your labors. So the game is really interesting, as it's all about what is best at the time and kind of min-maxing, not necessarily min-maxing, but just kind of maximizing your efficiency in protecting Solomon Kane, but also focusing on whatever the objectives of the chapters are. So the minis are gorgeous. This is by Mythic Games, and so they're the same people who do Super Fantasy Brawl, the same people who do what else is out by them? So they're doing Hell the Last Saga. They're doing Darkest Dungeon, but out of all their games, I think this one is definitely the most unique. The storytelling system is very solid. The way that you're resolving the actions are quick and exciting. And I think that the story itself is just baked into every aspect of the game, from the different chapters in the stories to the fight cards themselves. They have like these large texts that you'll be reading as you're fighting. It's really interesting. And I really like it. I'm having a lot of fun with this one. So I think I prefer the cooperative over the solo mode, because you have the different aspects and everybody's controlling all these different things. But there is a mode I haven't tried where you can do a competitive version where somebody actually plays as the darkness influencing Kane, and then the other people are playing as these spirits trying to keep on the right path. So I think that's really fascinating. But lots of different paths, lots of different things. Are you familiar with these novels at all? Have you read this? This is the same guy who wrote Conan.
Yeah, I've heard of them, but I've never read them. I knew there was a film released a few years ago. Never seen that either, but always intrigued me because it's almost like a witchery style character, and I like The Witcher, so it kind of I like the theme of it, and something I definitely want to dig into really. But miniatures look lovely on the game. It looks really quite striking.
It's pretty cool. I was quite impressed, and the fact that I really like the setup for the game as well. So each story you play, it has you gather all the things at the beginning, and so that way when you're playing, it goes very smoothly. And I think that's the way to do it. So I really enjoy that. They just have everything that you could possibly need, and I think it's really well done. I thought they did a great job, and I'm glad they took that extra time for development because you can tell that it's a refined product, and it's a super accessible, which I thought was really awesome.
Okay, cool. That's good to know. It's been clearly well designed. Okay, cool. I think we'll leave it there then. If you have any other honorable mentions you want to touch upon, or
mentioned to you this before the stream, but we talked about it a lot on this channel already. Newton, I played Newton last night, and I'm having a great time with it. So no, nothing more, just one playthrough so far, but having a great time.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. So let's move on then. So we'll go on to the next segment, which is crowdfunding. So as usual, it seems to be a bit of so it seems to be a bit of a reoccurring thing, but still no pick from me this month. So I've been really lucky this year, actually. Nothing that's really grabbed my attention to the point where I'm going to part with my money. So, but I know, Mackenzie, there's something you want to talk about. So fire away.
All right. So this one, I'm actually not 100% positive if we're going to back it yet. So I was a little on the fence at this one. But this one is Six Siege by Mythic Games. So this is the same people who just did Solomon Kane, right? So I know that their miniature quality is great. I know they take time to ensure their games are good. I know they had one really big miss with Reichbusters, but it seems that they've really taken it back. And the cool thing I think about games like Super Fantasy Brawl and Six Siege is they are reaching out to designers, so other people to come and design these games for them based on kind of the sphere that they're in. So this is by people that are fans of the Rainbow Six board games, but also who are board gamers at heart. So I think that's really cool. Now, Six Siege is a FPS game in a board game, and people have tried to do this many times. So I'm sure you're familiar with these, Dan. Things like Cry Havoc, Adrenaline. Most recently, I think it's called Reload. Is that what it is? The one by Colossal Games. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't know about that one, but yeah, I know the other two you mentioned, but not that one.
So there's a lot of attempts that have been made at this, is trying to capture this quick gameplay that's active, right? Something that you're actually playing back and forth real time. And I think that this looks extremely good. It has you using the terrain. It has you taking these shots. It has you controlling this team of only 6 people, which I think is really cool, where as opposed to some of these large miniature games, you might be controlling a lot. But I'm curious to see how this works as an FPS, controlling that many people at a time, because usually I just think of you controlling yourself. So this one seems really fascinating to me. The exclusives that they have are interesting. I don't know if they're worth backing it right now. A lot of them are like video game skins, so they're like DLC content if you own the video game. I don't own video games, so I don't see a really big use for this, but it's really interesting. So I'm curious to see what other daily unlocks show up and what would make it worth backing this game. I'm just really curious. I want to see more gameplay videos. I want to see this in action. The video itself kind of just shows you, it's very cinematic with how it feels. It doesn't really go into the details of the trailers, but they do have coverage by a lot of other YouTube channels. So I think I will continue to watch more of those before I make a decision on this. But as you see, it's only got 7 days left to go. And I'm not sure. This month has had pretty much nothing else. So, I mean, this could be the month where I don't back anything on Kickstarter, and that might not be a bad thing. So, or maybe I wait 7 days when it's July, and then I still have a month where I don't back anything, and then just back it in July. We'll call it good.
No, it certainly looks really impressive, and I'm surprised. Well, I can certainly see why this is so mass appealing because of the popularity of these kind of games. And in terms of being polished and looking the part, it certainly does that. And it almost looks I'm not terribly clued up on these kind of games, but it looks like a skirmishy war style game.
Yep, that's exactly what it is. You've got your team versus their team. And I do like that it's objective driven. That's one of my favorite things about Super Fantasy Brawl, is that it's objective driven as opposed to just beat each other up. This one has you, maybe you're working as a team to try to defuse a bomb or something like that. So I think it's cool. I think that adds more tactics to it because it's not just about fighting, not just about numbers.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, cool. I think Tim just going back to the Solomon Kane game, saying lucky that board games based on popular IPs are getting better. That seems to be a bit of a universal trend, actually, that all these kind of games are getting better, and more popular IPs in front of more non-gamers just spreads the word and makes the hobby more popular as a whole. So yeah, definitely a valid comment there, Tim. Okay, cool. Let's move on then. So we're going to go on to the news segment. So a couple of bits of news, I think one piece each this week, and I'm going to talk about an expansion for one of my favorite games of last year. Definitely my top 5 of last year, maybe even higher than that. And I believe you appreciate the game as well, Mackenzie.
So I do like the game. I didn't play it until this year, but I don't know if it'd be that high on my ranking because 2020, the more I'm playing a lot of 2020 games, the more I'm seeing a lot that I've really enjoyed. So, but this game is pretty good. I like it.
Cool. Well, the game we're talking about is Bonfire. So Bonfire, Stefan Feld game, very strange game, a point salad-y feel game as you are getting points in lots of different ways by lighting these bonfires, completing tasks, using these weird little gnome characters to your advantage. Really, I love the game. I'm absolutely terrible at it. I think I've mentioned before. I think I even talked about this on our Alphabet list a few weeks ago. But yeah, big fan of the game. I'm a huge Stefan Feld fan. So this is going to be a modular expansion. I imagine it's probably going to come out Essen time. Seems to be the trend. And there's not much information apart from a brief tagline and a bit of a summary here. So it looks like 3 modules. You're going to also be able to play with a 5th player. I don't think I'd ever use that. But it's a bit of a generic style expansion for these style of Euro games, where I think you're going to have the play with unique player powers. There's also going to be an events style system where the core rules of the game change throughout the game depending on whenever you place one of those portal tiles. And what's the one as well? New tree tiles as well. I don't know, unlocking powerful bonuses and new ways to score the game. So it looks like more of the same kind of stuff, more point salads galore, and some maybe unique player powers and that kind of thing. So more content for your favorite games is always a good thing. So yeah, definitely will be pretty much an auto back for me.
Super cool. Yeah, I like this kind of expansion, especially when they're modular. And Bonfire, like you said, it's already a pretty robust game. So I think this is really neat, just adding more to that system. Because the end game scoring conditions, some of those gnomes are stagnant. So I think it might be interesting to find different ways of that scoring. So that'll be exciting. I'm excited to see what these trees and the beasts are. Let's find out.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what's your piece of news then?
Mine's pretty minor. So this is for a game that I've been recommended a lot. This is a cooperative game called Dead Men Tell No Tales. So there's going to be a reprint of this game by Renegade Games, and I've heard that this is a really cool one. So the theme is there's a burning pirate ship, and your job is to go in there and basically loot the pirate ship and get out alive. So I think that's really funny theme, and the new version of this game is basically going to include some of the expansion content already, as well as have miniatures included. So I think that's really interesting that they are kind of moving on. But the cool thing about this is they are also offering that miniature set if you do want to upgrade to owners of the original game. So I think that's cool. But I think they're making it so that the box itself comes right out the gate as a full, complete game with some extra additional content. And then they also have the expansion that they're reprinting as well. And that was a bit of a harder one to get. So I think that's great for people that want to try this. And I know that I'll probably be taking them up on this offer. It's a little pricey, going at about $80 for the pre-order. So I may wait for one of the larger online retailers to get it. But I think that this one looks really fun, and it's one I really want to try. Have you played this one, Dan?
I haven't actually. I'm actually blown away by the artwork. That cover is fantastic. I've always got the vibe that this was another variant on the pandemic system. Is it a kind of an action point style co-op game? You know, a lot of these kind of co-ops tend to follow that pattern. But love the theme, and I'd be willing to give it a go. But maybe not something I'm gonna at least gravitate towards without playing it beforehand.
Totally makes sense. I think the theme is probably the most unique part of it. But I think that the idea of this burning ship is really cool because your game board is kind of constantly shifting. And I think that is a unique challenge. And I think that sounds like a lot of fun.
Okay, cool. So just going back to, I think, Tim's comment on Kickstarter. He's looking at First Ascent. Oh, yeah, that's the rock climbing game. I've seen that one. Okay. Shipping being a bit of a killer. Maybe stopping that happening. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, shipping seems to be a massive issue at the moment. And I don't know if it's going to come out at retail or not. So hopefully it will do that for you, Tim. You'll be able to get it at an affordable price and a realistic. Yeah.
Shipping is kind of ridiculous right now. Like right now, we are getting a pledge of Assassin's Creed in right now, and they basically have just asked everybody for extra money. That's one of the that's happened with a lot of different games. Like it happened with I think Black Rose Wars. They did that, and it's a giant Kickstarter game with all this content. So I'm probably going to pay the cost just so that we get it and we can start producing content on it. But oh man, that is definitely a thing. The cost of shipping has drastically increased.
Yep. Okay, moving on then. Let's go on to component appreciation.
On a lighter note, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Mackenzie, do you want to start on this one then? What are you talking about this week?
So mine is based purely on aesthetics this time. This is from the game Battle Line Medieval. So Battle Line Medieval features this really goofy artwork, and it's all this classic like medieval tapestry painting. It's hilarious. And so in the game, you have a lot of these cards that are basically one-time bonuses. And I think that's really fascinating. On your turn, when you play cards, you can whenever you draw back up to cards, whenever you draw back up to your hand size, you can draw from like this special ability deck, or you can just draw from the main deck. But the special ability cards are all titled something, and they are hilarious. So the artwork on them are just super goofy. This one in particular is Trader, and it's very straightforward. You just kind of steal one of your opponent's cards. But the card artwork is so funny. Just look at this guy. Can you zoom in there, Dan? It is so funny. He's just getting shanked, and it's so funny. It just cracks me up because their faces are hilarious, and I just can't get enough of it. Yeah, get some detail in there. Zoom. Oh my gosh, it cracks me up because they're just so nonchalant about it, and it's so funny. So my sense of humor is really weird, but I just think this is hilarious because it's his best friend. He doesn't even see it coming, and just the way he's posed, it really cracks me up. So that's my card component appreciation for this week. I think it's really funny. This is the Trader card. This was actually my phone screen background for a long time, this picture on my lock screen. It was so funny. I love it. It's dumb stuff like this is great.
Okay, cool. Just on a different note, relating to the battle line, the game itself, do you prefer to play it with the special cards or without the special cards?
So I really like the special cards, actually. So the thing that makes them interesting is in Battleline Medieval, as opposed to the original, there's like the actual mode, if you're playing with the special cards, is that you check for victory at the start of your turn as opposed to the end. So it gives your opponent time to react. So you have to try to anticipate what they might do, which makes for really interesting situations. And I think that's really cool. The cards themselves are really neat because you have the option to use them. And you can only play cards if you are tied with the number your opponent has already played, the special cards, or if you've played less than them. So if you've already used it, then you're at the mercy of that. And I think that's really neat because it's kind of like, when is that appropriate? When is it actually useful? But you can gather a hand of these cards, which is neat. But the more you have, the more options you have, but also the less options you have the other. I think it offers a really interesting choice. And this is my favorite version of Battle Line. And I know there's only like 3 versions, the original, this one, and then Schottentotten 2. But I think this one is the best version.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I really love Battle Line. I do have I think the GMT version. But I think I'd rather have the medieval one because I prefer the aesthetic. But I don't think I'm willing to get rid of my other one just to get this one. So.
The aesthetic is real good, and it has like 4 expansions in it. So I think that's really neat, and they're all modular. So I would recommend this one if you want to give yours as a gift to somebody else. So
Okay, cool. There you go. So my component is something that holds, well, it's a bit of a strange one. So this is from the game Push, which is a very simple pushy luck game. But in particular, I'm talking about this die. This die strikes terror into the fear of anybody who plays this game. So if you're not familiar with Push, it's a very simple pushy luck game, as you are almost playing cards or drawing cards blindly from a deck in almost like a blackjack style way, but instead of going over a certain number, you don't want to ever draw the same color or a duplicate number, and you've got 3 piles in order to do that with. But sometimes you'll draw cards with that symbol of a die on it, and you are going to put those on piles which can potentially go to other players or even go to yourself, and if you go bust, you're going to be forced to roll this die. And the thing about this is that when you start to accumulate more and more cards, they are vulnerable to being lost to the roll of this die, or you can choose to sacrifice a whole turn in order to keep them safe from the power of the die. But the cool thing is that when you roll this, you are either going to roll any different color, which is going to get rid of all your cards that you've not banked of that certain color, which means that you could be throwing tons and tons of points away. But if you roll the black symbol, the black star there, it gets rid of every single card that you've banked that you haven't banked yet. And it's just such a terrifying thought, and it really is one of the most exciting moments in gaming that you can possibly experience. I absolutely love this, and just looking at it, people just don't want to roll it, and it's just it just has connotations that go with that die. I love it. I think it's fantastic. Have you played Push before?
I've never heard of this one. So when you put this on your the component, I was like, this is so goofy. It looks like Uno, but that sounds fantastic. Sense of dread from a single tiny component. That's awesome.
Yeah, it really is, and that's really where that pushy luck goes into it, because you can actually go through the whole game and not bank any cards and hope you don't roll badly, and you can actually win that way, or you can play it safe and try to duck and hide from the power of the die. But yeah, love it. Absolutely brilliant game, and a big part of it is because of that die roll. Okay, so let's move on then. So we are going to be talking about this or that. Okay, so this is a segment of the show where we compare two things, whether that's 2 similar games, 2 ideas, anything to do with board gaming really. We kind of give them a bit of a face-off and put the vote to our viewers, to our subscribers, and they will settle the argument once and for all which one is better. So last episode we talked about sleeving games. I was in the camp that I tend to very rarely sleeve my games, and if I was given the option not to sleeve at all or to sleeve everything, I would say don't sleeve. And I know, Mackenzie, you're a huge sleever, and
you sleeve every single card here, man.
You are really in the other camp. So this was actually a really interesting poll, because it was back and forth, almost 50-50 throughout the whole thing, but we have got a decisive winner now, and I'm sad to say that Mackenzie did win this one.
Hey, thank you, board game people. I'm so happy you respect your games.
So if I can get this screen, there we go. So we did this or that. If you had to sleeve everything or not sleeve anything at all, it was 56% in favour of sleeving, 44% in favour of not sleeving. So yeah, I can see that one, but again, I'd love to sleeve everything if I could, but I generally don't think it's worth it for me. But yeah, I do love sleeves. I actually like playing with sleeves in general. I know people complain about shuffling cards with sleeves in, but I actually think it's better. But I don't quite understand that argument. But yeah, there we go. So sleeving is people's preference.
Thank you very much for conceding to the correct answer. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So the next question we're going to put to people is, we are going to compare actually a game we've talked about already this episode. So I think it's fair to say we're both quite a fan of these kind of murder mystery style games. We like solving a mystery, and we're going to compare 2 of the games at the forefront of that, probably 2 of the most popular in the genre. We're going to be comparing Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, which is again much more traditional version, paper and pen, all the newspapers you're flipping through, directories, that kind of thing. and we're going to be comparing it to, I suppose, the modern equivalent, which is Chronicles of Crime, a more app-driven game, as you're using QR codes to kind of question people, to examine evidence. You're using a 3D glasses to these kind of things. I actually am a big fan of both of these games. Have you played both of them as well, Mackenzie?
Mm-hmm. So we have both of these in the library. We have all of the Sherlock Holmes, and then we have the 3 of the original game for Chronicles of Crime. So the Red View and Noir and the base game. So yes, I have definitely played a lot of these. As you mentioned, we are both really big fans of this, and detective games are something that my wife and I really enjoy playing together. So I really like this topic. So I'm excited to hear what you think. So Dan, what do you think? Do you, just right off the bat, initial things, which one's your favorite? Just tell me.
Well, this is actually probably the closest one that I don't quite know which to decide. I think in terms of innovativeness, being a bit more dynamic, I would slightly, and I'm talking half a percentage, lean towards Chronicles of Crime. But that's no slight at all on Consulting Detective. I'm a big fan of it, and it has a lot more of a charm to it. I think a bit more of a traditional vibe, and I find it a bit more relaxing. But that extra element of being able to things change on the whim. Someone can get killed. You can discover a bit of evidence that you didn't foresee. There's a bit more scope for being a bit more creative, and again keeping you on your toes a bit more. Whereas Consulting Detective is a bit more stagnant. All the information is in front of you at one time, and you got to decide which leads to follow. But what about yourself? What would you lean towards?
So just initially, I'm going to pick Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. So it's the one that I find myself going back to the most. It's the I like you said, it's more traditional. I really enjoy this setting. I like Sherlock. I think that he's a great character. I love Wiggins. He's like my boy right now. He and we do all of our crimes together. It's so funny. We have like voices that we do for everybody, and it's really fun. And I really enjoy the newspaper system. I really enjoy the case books themselves. I love that the more you play this game, the more you're familiar with these characters, and I think that's really neat that the characters are the same throughout them. You have this relationship with these people. I think that's really cool. I'm not going to discredit that Chronicles of Crime is a super awesome, innovative game. It's another amazing crime-solving game. Like you said, this is very close. They're both extremely good games. And I see Tim here. He's mentioning about the modern app-driven style games. I'll be honest. One of the reasons that I like Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective more is it doesn't require the app. So like I said earlier, this is one that I travel a lot with. And so it's harder to do the app things when you're traveling. So I really like that accessibility of Sherlock Holmes. But you're totally right. As Dan alluded to, the idea that your game can learn and can change because of the app is so cool. I think that's amazing.
Yeah. And I know, as kind of Tim's alluding to, you seem to be in two camps, and maybe a potential question for a future this or that. Are you in favor of having apps in your board games? I know some people have a kind of a blanket rule where they don't have phones at the table. They don't like mixing technology and their board gaming time. And I can completely see both sides of the story, but I think it's almost pays off with Chronicles of Crime because there is so much more you can do. But yeah, as you said, it could be anyone. If you ask me another day, I could lean in the camp of Consulting Detective. So yeah, both fantastic games and probably leads of their kind of categories in the board gaming space. So I'm really interested to see what the.
What do you think of the 3D scenario? Because like there are points in Chronicles of Crime where you actually look at the scenario. Is that something you enjoy? Yeah. What do you think?
So I'm actually 3D doesn't seem to sit well with me in general, but I just don't seem to find it works with me. I don't know if it's my eyes or something. I don't know. But I love the idea of just actually physically searching the crime scene. So even if you're not playing it with the 3D element, you can still actually look around the scene as if it's like a 3D. You can look behind you. You can find a bit of blood on the floor. You can find a murder weapon hidden behind the sofa. This kind of thing. So I love the way that you can actually physically examine the crime scene and pick up the evidence that way, and potentially miss stuff as well, which is adds a bit more fun to the game. But Yeah, the actual physical implementation, the actual how the 3D element works is it's okay at best, really. But I love the idea of it.
I'd have to agree. And I do really like the new implementations they've made in the expansions. So Noir is the one we've been playing the most for Chronicles of Crime. And it seems like with the new, the time period ones, like I forget it's like 1400 and the one in the future and all that stuff, it sounds like they're taking that system and implementing it even further with like taking actions outside of the app and then the standard investigation actions. So I think that's really sweet. I think that's exciting.
Yeah, I've only played one of the Noir scenarios, and I really enjoyed that one. Yeah, because you can kind of intimidate people and stuff, and give them a bit of a pasting behind the building. Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's the question this week: is going to be Chronicles of Crime or Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. So I'll put up a poll in the maybe even later today or in the next coming day or two. Okay, so let's move on then. So the next segment we're going to be talking about is mechanism appreciation. So this is where we talk about particular elements of games, whether we like that game or not, really, that we really enjoy, whether we, a particular aspect and a particular part of a game that we like. So go for it, Mackenzie. What are you gonna talk about this week?
So this is a mechanism that is shared between two of my favorite games. One that I started playing when I first entered the hobby, and another that was the sequel to this game, but came out and really challenged me. And it's one that I really just find myself coming back to all the time. And this game is Terra Mystica and Gaia Project. And specifically, I want to talk about the Power Bowls. So in these games, there are multiple forms of currency. So in Terra Mystica, you have money, workers, and power. And then in the most recent, you also have the workers, the money, power, and knowledge. So power is the one thing that is shared between the two, but the bowls themselves are really fascinating. So the way they work is this resource is a wheel. So we got a picture here, and you start with power in usually bowls 1 and 2, and whenever you gain power, you first have to move them from 1 to 2. And then once all that power is moved, they move from 2 to 3. So in this example here, if you were to gain 4 power, you would move 2 from 1 to 2, and then 2 from 2 to 3. But you can only ever spend the power in bowl 3. So this is really interesting because, yes, well, as soon as you have power in bowl 3, you can use it and take really powerful actions with it that are really necessary. However, if you do that, that power, when you spend it, goes back to bowl 1, so it's going to take even longer to cycle. So it's a really interesting push and pull of like, do I wait and accumulate a bunch of power and then use it all at once, or do I just do it and use it as soon as I have it and be a little less efficient, but you're going to gain that immediate resource. So I really enjoy that system here. And the most fascinating part of this is the way that you can burn power. So on your turn, you can actually get rid of power in bowl 2 permanently to push power from 2 to 3. So this basically is forcing your engine forward. And I think that's really cool because not only are you getting access to that resource soon, but you're also limiting the amount of power in all the bowls. So that way, whenever you gain it, it's going to cycle even faster because there's less to move around. But that limits the amount of actions you can take with the power. So it's got this really awesome system behind it. And the other way that you gain power is when people are moving adjacent. So it's all about knowing when to take the power. It's so well integrated in the game. And it's a really fascinating resource that I have not seen used in any other style of game with this. It's just such an interesting system. So I really like this. That's the Power Bowls in Gaia Project and Terra Mystica.
Yeah, that sounds cool, and it sounds like something I need to try.
Have you not played either?
I've not playid either. It's they are creeping to the top of my purchase list. I don't know which one to go for, Gaia Project or Terra Mystica. What's your initial recommendation of the two? Because I don't know which to go for.
Honestly, you're probably going to end up getting both, so I'd probably just start with Terra Mystica. Okay. So because both games are very similar, but the second one just has more additional mechanics. It has 2 large mechanics that are added. But you're going to want to buy both as soon as you play the first one. So I would recommend Terra Mystica because it's literally just more factions for the game with more mechanics. And the new factions use those new mechanics, which makes it even more interesting. So I would recommend Terra Mystica first and enjoy it. Really have a good time. And then after you fall in love with it, go buy Gaia Project and you'll love it.
Okay, cool. That's what I wanted to hear. I mean, I prefer fantasy over sci-fi anyway, so I will do it. So Okay, so the mechanism I'm going to talk about is something from a bit more of a simpler game, a more family weight game, but I think it is so well implemented and it's so fresh, original, and thematic. This one is basically the light system or the shadow system from the game Photosynthesis. So Photosynthesis is an abstract game that came out a few years ago now, probably about 4 years ago or so. And it's a game where you are trying to basically sow these seeds. You're going to grow these seeds into small trees, then the small trees into medium trees, and eventually into big trees, with the idea of trying to cut them down to get victory points. And the closer they are to the center of the board, the more points you are going to get. But there's a real cool system here where you've got this sun that rotates around the board from round to round, and that sun is going to determine how many light points you are going to start gathering, which is going to be your currency in the game. But the cool thing is that, as a tree would in real life, the bigger the tree is going to cast a bigger shadow. So, for example, this tree here, because it's a medium-sized tree, is going to cast a shadow of 2 spaces directly behind it. The small ones are going to cast a shadow of 1, and a really big tree is going to cast a shadow of 3. But they're also going to start gathering more. The bigger trees are also going to gather more light points as well, which is a kind of a weird balance where you want to have your big trees on the board because you want to start gathering more light points, but at the same time you want to cut them down to get the points in the first place. But I suppose I'm going a bit on tangent there. So I suppose the mechanism that I wanted to purely talk about was that light system. It's just so easy to explain. It makes sense. It's logical, and I love it when mechanisms are so easy to explain because they are just so thematic and pure, and there's literally no room for confusion in terms of how these trees work. And I think it's so fresh and just absolutely brilliantly executed.
So yeah, I totally agree with this one. This is a great choice. You're right. It makes so much sense, and it's super logical. Yeah, you couldn't have said it better.
Oh, okay, wonderful. Thank you. Okay, let's go cover a couple of Tim's comments here. So I think we're talking about the app integration we were talking about earlier. He says it tends to work well with kind of mystery style games because you can add new stories, you can inject new content into the game, and basically keep it fresh, really. Like games such as Matches of Madness are known for. So yeah, always a great method of keeping your favorite games relevant and keep getting them to the table, really, which is what we all want. Okay.
And Tim, Chronicles of Crime definitely has done that a couple of times, and even other creators have created scenarios for Chronicles of Crime. So there's lots of new stuff to download, and they're constantly releasing stuff for it. So, and yes, Mansions of Madness definitely does that, which I think is super cool. I totally agree. It's the best part of an app is that you can add content to it. Yeah,
and in Chronicles of Crime, there's actually an ability to create your own scenarios if you want to spend that much time and play about with it that way. So if you've got a creative mind and you want other people to explore your murder mysteries, then you can do that. Cool. Okay, let's move on then. So this is the fan favorite segment. This is the random game, where we use the random game function from Board Game Geek. Could be anything that we end up with. And we'll talk about with whatever it is determined. So
we're getting a known game this time. It's going to be a game that we actually know about. I'm guessing this time.
Absolutely not. Let's go for it. I'll press the button. Let's see what we end up with. So yeah, even if 10 people have played this game, I'll be happy because normally it's just one.
Yeah, normally it's like somebody made this. Ha ha! Boom! There you go. The Pokemon trading card game. I'm pretty sure you know this one, Dan.
Never heard of it.
Oh, okay. Dang, I was wrong. Well, I know this one. At my school that I work at, I actually have a Pokemon TCG club that I run, and so I'm getting kids into games and thinking about competitive play and getting that mindset. It's pretty cool, and I actually don't know what this is though. What Psycho Drive Hail Blizzard? Is it a booster pack set? Is this a deck? Is this a TCG? So
okay, it's a Japanese language expansion. Okay, so it's an English language expansion. Next Destinies. I don't.
So it looks like it's just a booster pack set. So 114 cards. So that means that it's, you get the 9-card booster packs. I think it's 11 for Pokemon, but you get the booster packs, and they've got your rare cards and your ultras and your supers and all that stuff. So cool. Yeah, but I mean, if you want to just go to the Pokemon trading card game, because this is an expansion. But
so have you actually explore actually playing the game? I know most people collect Pokemon cards just for the collection aspect of the hobby, I suppose.
Yes, so I actually have played the game, and I do play it. So my favorite way to play this game are with what are called I think they're called World Championship decks. So Pokemon is a pretty expensive game, but not as expensive as some others like Magic and whatnot. But in Pokemon, they do a World Championship every year, and the winners of those championships, they actually get their decks published by the company. And I think it's so cool. So you can actually play with the deck that the winner of the national championships won with. And I think that's so sweet. However, the backs of the cards are different. So you can't actually use them in competitive play. They're just for fun. But I think that is the best way to learn, to play, and to teach the game, because you're giving these kids these decks that are like proven amazing decks, and they get to play it, and they play at this really high competitive level, but it's so accessible because you can buy the decks for like $10 for these like decks that would normally cost maybe hundreds of dollars because they have all the rare cards and stuff in it. So I think it's super fun. They get to play their favorite games, and the game itself is solid. It's not the best game. As you can see, it's a 6.3. There's a lot of downtime because you just you can't really do anything on your opponent's turns. But for middle schoolers that are just getting into collecting, just getting into kind of getting this competitive aspect and learning learning good sportsmanship and strategy, I think this is a solid one. I think it's fun, and it's a theme that kids really enjoy, and it's one that I think I like teaching this one, and I think that it's a great system for this for what it's for. I think it's great.
Yeah, I mean, I played the game a few times a few years ago, and I actually thought it was okay. It was fine, better than I thought it would be, actually, because I don't know if it's insane in the States or not, but not many people actually play the game over here, and it really was just a collection thing. Have ring binders, Pokemon cards. But yeah, the game itself was fine, and it works. It does what it does quite well.
I agree. Okay. It's funny. This is one of those games that, as you mentioned with the collection aspect, most people don't know how to play it. And I think that's really funny. Whenever I teach this, they're like, you can play this game. It's a game. And I think that's really funny. And people enjoy it. And it's cool because they can take this collection and actually do something with it. So I think that's really neat. Okay,
cool. That's our random game.
Wow. Pokemon. That was a very different random game than we used to. That's wild.
Nice welcome change there. And Tim says only a 6.3 for this game. I think that's probably a double-edged sword, really, in terms of how popular it is. Popular games, when you're that popular, I think maybe hobbyists are going to turn their nose up a bit, maybe. I don't know.
Even as a game itself, I can definitely understand the 6.3 rating. First off, it has a pretty big barrier to entry if you want to get into competitive stuff. And then also, there's a lot of downtime. Okay. And I can see that being a big turnoff for people. That also benefits you if you play the game longer because like the different cards and potential strategies. So I can definitely see the 6.3 being a very fair rating for this game.
Okay, cool. Moving on from Pokemon. So the next segment we are going to talk about is why is this in your collection? So this is a segment where we take a look through each other's collections and we'll pick a game and we'll just ask that question. Why is it in your collection? Whether it's because we've played it already and we think it's not very good, or we want basically you to sell it to me because it's something I'm curious about, or anything like that, really. So do you want to start this week, Mackenzie?
Sure, I will ask you, Dan. The game that I'm talking about today is Brutal Kingdom. We talked about this before in one of your favorite components with the Frog Boy, and I think that your rating of Brutal Kingdom and the fact you've only played it once, why do you still have this?
It's on my sell pile, so I won't have it for much longer. It's not a great game. It looks fantastic. Got a great aesthetic to it. Some really quirky characters. This is a pretty simple role selection style card game, you are trying to get points in different ways, trying to trigger different abilities, that kind of thing. And to be honest, it's not a great one. There are loads of these kind of games, and this one is a pretty substandard one, actually. I was a bit unimpressed, particularly because I don't dislike Michael Renick as a designer. I found a lot of the powers too circumstantial. Had quite a unique scoring system where the more you collect things, you kind of multiply it by these tokens still in the pool. A bit hard to explain, but it was quite unique, and I would like to see that used again in another game. But yeah, it's a matter of this one being on my sale pile. It will be a formerly owned game very soon, and I can't advocate it at all. But if you want a nice looking game, then this is certainly one of those, because there's some amazing character art and a nice big cards. And I got this one just on a complete, gamble, really, as it was on sale just for a few pounds, and I took a gamble, and that gamble did not pay off. So I can't defend this one at all. It's okay. That's Brutal Kingdom. Yeah.
I think that's a great reason that it's still in your collection, though, is because it's still on the sell pile. That's great.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, bring it on. What are we talking about this time?
So this is a game I've been on the fence with for a while. And it's one that I've heard generally good things about, almost unanimously good things about. I've done some digging into it. I've had a look at how the game plays out, and I'm struggling to see where the interest of this game comes from. I'm struggling to see how this one keeps players' interest. And this is a reprinting of an older game called Heartland, I think it's called. This is Gunkamono. Why is Gunkamono still in your collection or in your collection?
So Gunkamono, this was purchased during a Gen Con where we just got a bunch of games. And unfortunately, most of those games did not keep, and we spent way too much on a lot of stuff there. And it kind of soured us on Gen Con as a whole, because it was like, oh man, there's such a high risk of like getting crap from here because nobody's played a lot of these games. So it was really funny. But Gunkamono is one that, how do I describe it? So it's an area control game using dominoes. And so as you're playing these dominoes out, you're trying to do matching symbols. You have these really interesting, clever ways where you can kind of stack them on each other. But I would agree with this rating. I think it's a 7. I think it's a fine game. So the reason it's in this collection is because a lot of people that I play it with, they really, really enjoy it. There's something very simple and satisfying about laying dominoes, and that's something that everybody can gravitate towards. It's something that people are familiar with, and this game does it really interestingly. When you play the dominoes out, you're able to put these little shrines on top of them once you reach a certain threshold, and those become point generators, essentially. As long as you have colors in that kingdom, you're going to score that many points every round based on what in your kingdom. And I think that's really neat. As you can see here, the game board also is going to get multiple levels. And so as you play, you want to lay dominoes in a way that you're going to make it hard for people to cut up your kingdom. And I think that's really neat. So there's a lot of strategy when you're playing. This game reminds me a lot of something like Yellow and Yangtze or Tigris and Euphrates, where you are obviously trying to be generating points on your turn, but you're also constantly looking at what other people are doing because you do need to cut them off. You need to prevent them from scoring, and people can really work together and gang up. And so this game is extremely simple in its mechanics, but I think that's its charm. Nothing really deep here. This track here is a race in order to get to those ends. When you play tiles, you can either score them for points or move up this track. And if you're the first up to the top, you get a certain amount of points. And that's also how you bring out your control markers. But I don't think this one is like a you must buy. I think it's a very comfortable game, and it's not one that I find myself pulling out a lot because it doesn't really offer a lot for me. So I would not go out and buy this one, Dan, but this is one that I would give a try because it is fun. It's a fun game. It's very calm, soothing, which is funny because it's also very very competitive in the fact that you're trying to force control off of things. So a soothing area control game. This is Gunkamono. So I don't know if I've completely sold you on this. I wouldn't go out and look and buy this one, but it is one I'd give a try.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure if it was going to be one of those games where from the rules you think I can't see where the gameplay is here, and then once you play it you think, oh, that's why this is juicy, that's why this is exciting. And it sounds like this is maybe not for me. It sounds like it's something for so someone just to sit back, enjoy it. It's probably going to be somewhat familiar because it's the domino style system, but with an element of area control. So, okay, I think
juicy is not the word I would use to describe this game at all. So, I would say it's very straightforward, simple, and like you said, comfortable.
Okay, cool. And in fact, that's actually useful for me to hear because it sounds like it's going to be a dodge for me. Something that I don't need to take a look at. Okay, so thanks for that.
Yeah. No problem.
Okay.
But as you can see, there's a reason it's in the library, right? A lot of people do enjoy this style.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And just I think on my game, Brutal Kingdom, Tim has put, it's so funny, a bad game can be forgiven at a good price. Yeah, I think I paid next to nothing for that game. I wouldn't say it was forgiven. It's still going out the door. So okay, let's move on then. So that is our why is this in your question segment. So we're going to move on to A to Z. So this is where we talk about a game from a certain letter category. We talk about a simple game and a more involved game, and basically talk about why we enjoy those games. So today we are on the letter D, and so let's get started then. Shall I lead the way with this one?
Start us off, Dan. What's your filler game that you're talking about this week, or your shorter game?
Okay. So the filler game I'm going to talk about is a really small box game from popular company, Oink Games. This is Deep Sea Adventure. Deep Sea Adventure is actually a game that I've had my eye on for a while. I don't know why I didn't buy this one earlier, because I know it was well renowned as a good push-your-luck game. I tend to enjoy push-your-luck games in general. And this is another one I really enjoy. So this is really simple. You are basically you're all in a submarine together. So this one accommodates 2 to 6 players, I believe, which is quite nice. And the idea is that we're trying to dive into the ocean, trying to get these different tokens, trying to bring them back to the surface before the oxygen runs out. But oxygen in this game is quite interesting because it's a shared commodity. So every time someone's picked up a certain resource or one of these points tokens, you are going to start depleting the oxygen, which means that it's going to start ticking down, and all the other players are going to have to get back to the submarine in order to not lose all the loot they've already picked up. But the other element that's cool about this is because you do actually just roll the dice in order to determine how far you move up or down on this pile of tokens. But for every bit of loot you pick up, you actually reduce the pit values of the dice rolls by 1. So it almost kind of factors in how heavy this equipment is when you pick it up. So I think that's just a nice little twist there. The element of the shared oxygen is a nice twist as well. And just those two little things make it feel a little bit different to some of the other some of the other push-your-luck games out there. So yeah, this one seems to be a bit of a hit with whoever I played this with now, and it just seems to be a real nice, easy, accessible filler game with some pretty tense endings as you want to just make it back to the submarine in time before all that oxygen's done and you lose everything. So yeah, I like this one. I've only rated about a 7 out of 10, but that still is quite a good thing for a game. It's pretty much just a roll and write game. A roll and move game. But yeah, I like this one. It's a nice little box and kind of has a certain charm to it. Have you played this one?
I think these Oink games are just charming as a whole. The only game I've actually played from Oink is Fake Artist Goes to New York. So I heard a lot of things from Deep Sea Adventure that the game was not that good. I heard that it was just okay, that a lot of people were just rushing to the end, and it became just a exercise of watching somebody just eat all the oxygen. This game reminds me a lot of Clank, where some people might just jump in and jump out. So I'm not the biggest fan of base game Clank because of that aspect, and this one seemed to be like that was one of the biggest key parts of the game. So what do you think? What are your opinions on that?
So that is kind of mitigated, because if you go and do a quick smash and grab, get back to the submarine, you actually don't deplete the oxygen. So once you're in the submarine, the oxygen is not going to be eaten up by you. So that kind of fixes itself. Really, you're not going to shaft other players by being, a bit not cowardly, but you know what I mean. By getting back there and backwards quick, it can actually help other people because it's someone less to worry about.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
There are some elements because when you roll these dice, you actually never ever share a space with someone else. You actually jump straight over them, and just sometimes you just need to roll a low number, and you end up rolling a high number, jumping over loads of people. Everyone else turns around and goes backwards with their loot. You've not even picked anything up yet, so you need to roll again and go deep. And by the time there's almost no chance you'll get back. That does happen sometimes, but for a 30-minute game, I don't think that's a bad thing, and it's almost fun, and people enjoy that kind of thing. They enjoy watching you suffer and watching you crawl back to the submarine and feeling, basically. So yeah, I really enjoy it. I think it's great.
My quote from Dan today: "Deep sea adventure. It's almost fun." That's great. But yeah, this one is cute. I love the aesthetic. I think this is a good choice, and this is one I do actually want to try. I just haven't had an opportunity.
Yeah, I'd recommend it. It's cheap as well. It's not expensive. Okay, so what's your filler game or your lighter game this week?
So my light game this week is my favorite social deduction game. This is Deception Murder in Hong Kong, and I think it is incredible. So I've had nothing but success with this game, and it's one that I enjoy playing every single time. It takes the idea of a social deduction game and says, hey, this actually is going to give you something to base your accusations off of. It has the werewolf style where you have a team of bad people, but these people are going to be picking a murder weapon and a piece of evidence. And they tell this forensic scientist this information. And the forensic scientist is going to be giving clues to all of the investigators, trying to help guide them to this answer. And I think that is so cool because this forensic scientist gets to craft a story based on this information. And it's up to all of the players to determine what that story is and what it means. And I think it's done so well. So I think this is the best version of a social deduction game because of that, the initial clue that you have, so you can immediately start guessing based on something, and that story builds on, and it's up to the players to kind of craft the story. And the idea that even if you're always in the game, you're always able to give information, you're able to influence something at any point. And I think that's so cool. So I really like this. I love that there's a bunch of different roles that you can use. And I just love the absurdity and the bizarreness of all of the murder weapons. You can get killed from like a shrimp allergy or like a bamboo stick. Or as you can see here, you can get killed by a punch. My favorite way to die, though, has to be potted plant. I think that's so funny. Or the other one is, the best one is uncooked chicken. That's the best way to die, by salmonella poisoning. So I think these are so funny, and it's like surprisingly morbid, the theme, but it's just so goofy in the way it happens and the way that the clues come out. So I really like this one. So I noticed your rating, Dan. What are your feelings on this game?
Okay, yeah. So Deception, I completely agree with you with some of the things you said. This does a great job of getting over that factor that a lot of people have issues with social deduction games. This one doesn't put you so much on the spot and having you to make or just make things up on the whim. You can actually make logical. There's a logical game behind it, and you can actually make logical arguments. Saying, you might have said, yeah, it's a blunt trauma injury. Yeah, I'm the murderer, but this guy's got a hammer as well, so I'll just say it's him. Whereas in a lot of other games, you can't do that. So 2 thumbs up in terms of that. And if you'd asked me within, say, 25 plays of Deception Murder in Hong Kong, I would have been completely agreed with you. This one was a massive hit. I loved it. This was actually probably in my top 20 at one point. I was overly enamored with it. I think maybe I played it a bit too much and got a bit fatigued with it. But initially, I did start to notice some games that didn't land as well as they used to. I had the odd hit, the odd miss where someone would think of something and someone would solve it straight away, or I don't know. I just had a few misses with this game, and it wasn't always the unanimous hit that it was before. And I think it's just I had my time with it, and I've just kind of moved on from it. But I can completely understand why this is a lot of people's favorite social deduction game, because it does have that logical puzzle and that that backbone that makes sense. Where a lot of other of these games don't do that.
Now, just off the key, really quick, just very briefly, what is your favorite social deduction game?
It's definitely the Resistance Avalon.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I love that one. Yeah, I love it. Okay, so shall we move on to our more involved games? So
let's do it.
The more involved game I'm going to talk about this week is something or a game that I think has fallen out of a bit of the public eye, really. I mean, it seems to have had its little moment in the sun, and then since its initial release, seemed to have died down a bit. I never hear people talking about this one, and I often refer to this one as a bit of an underrated gem, a bit of a hidden, well, something that's just fallen into a bit of obscurity. This is Deus. Now, Deus is actually from Sebastian Dujardin, who had his part in Trois. I know we're both fans of Trois. This one is, I would describe it as a pretty light Civilization style game, but the thing I take away from this game more than anything is the element of engine building and tableau building. As you are managing a hand of cards, you're buying these cards with resources and adding them to your tableau. And when you do that, you're going to trigger a certain ability on that, which could be, gather a bunch of resources. It could be move your military units around the map. It could be get points for certain criteria and things. But the cool thing is that whenever you play one of these cards, not only do you trigger that card, you trigger every former or every card that you've played of that type prior to it as well. And that can create some extremely powerful turns where you can string these actions together and create really satisfying engines. And on top of that, the actual main game itself on the center board is pretty simple. You have all these different units on the board, such as your ships, your different things, and you're trying to move your military units to surround these outlaw camps to collect these points tokens. But yeah, the thing I took away from this one is the card play, the engine building, the multi-use card system, because not only are you using them for the actual face value of those cards' abilities, but also you can discard them to get a different ability as well, such as drawing more cards, getting points, bringing new buildings to be placed onto the board, that kind of thing. But works really well, pretty streamlined, pretty accessible, and it plays in probably an hour maximum. And yeah, it just ticked a lot of boxes for me. That's Deus.
Interesting. So this is one I really want to give a try, particularly for the mechanic you mentioned with the stacking actions. It looks fantastic. Is this one accessible? I mean, is it easy to get right now? Tim in the comments is saying that he's got a friend with it and he's been playing a bunch. So yeah, I want to give this one a try. It looks great.
Yeah, I think, or at least in the UK, I didn't have any issues at all getting my hands on this one. So yeah, I don't know if it's an issue or not. And Arthur, thanks for joining us, Arthur. He said, would you compare Deus with Ginkopolis? I suppose they both have, well, I would describe the engine building in Ginkopolis as very subtle, really. You've only got 3 kind of engines you build, kind of a points one. I would say the engine building comes through a lot stronger in Deus than it does in Ginkopolis, where Ginkopolis is a bit more abstracty, a bit more about the area control and the tile placement. So that thought didn't initially appear to me, but I can see what you mean, Arthur. But if you like your engine building, then I would say Deus is probably definitely has that stronger side of things.
Cool. This is one I'm excited to give it a try. Great choice.
Okay.
All right. So my more involved game is actually going to kind of go with our earlier segment on this or that. So this is going to be Detective, a modern crime board game. So Detective, I think, is one of the best crime-solving, so detective board games. And I think that the system is so sound. So sound, in fact, that Portal Games is designing multiple games around the system, whether it be the Vienna Connection or the new Dune House Secrets that's going to be out. So the system is that good. The system is very straightforward. You use a web browser that is a database, and this is where you're going to be looking up things in like it's basically a resource bank. It's very similar to Chronicles of Crime. It's a ever shifting, ever changing thing that you can plug and play content into. But the way Detective works is it actually uses a deck of cards for the scenarios. And the deck of cards, these represent your leads. So not only do you have these leads represented by cards, but you also have a map that you're going to be traveling around. So it's very cool because as opposed to these other games, you're kind of just, you're worried about the number of leads, or maybe you're just kind of worried about the number of time you have. In this one, you're actually traveling to places and you have a physical component, and you're working. You're a detective. This is what you do. So you wake up at 8 a.m. and you're kind of managing your time doing these different things, traveling around. You have these wonderful components, as you can see here, where you're going to be drawing lines to things, and you actually create these boards. We had this giant board when we were finished with the original campaign, and that was super fun. You feel very much like you are a detective. Like this is your job. I had a friend of mine say that he couldn't play this game because it was so similar to what he does in his actual job that he felt like he was just going to work. And I thought that was so neat that it captured that feeling so well. This is one that I just really enjoy. I love the system. My favorite one out of all of them has been, I really enjoy the California one. There's one that's set in like a 60s California, and that one's really neat. It's set in that time period. And so it's really funny. The system that you use online is actually an old school computer. So you have like this green screen with like these little Y and N for yes and no, and your case files are printed on these like transcript paper with like little holes on the side. It's so fun. I think they did a fantastic job with this. The stories are interesting. The twists that they give you are great, and I've really been enjoying the standalone missions as well. They've got all this additional content for just more cases, and this is a game I just want to play more of. So I'm excited for all of the new releases for this, and this is, I think, my favorite detective game. So I think it's a good blend of something like Sherlock and Chronicles of Crime, and this is my ideal detective game. It's one that I enjoy the most, I think, out of all three of those. So in this or that, this is my actual winner.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I wanted to try this one, but a bit like your friend said, this might be a bit like work to me as well. But it certainly looks like an optimistic design. It looks like it does what it's supposed to do, and I know the general consensus is that this it works. It's really well regarded and highly touted, really, in terms of these detective style games. The only criticism I've ever heard of these ones are that the writing itself, in terms of the story, which I'm not particularly hung up on, is a bit cliche, a bit cringy at times. Is that the case or not?
I don't think it's too bad. I think it's fine. It's definitely a detective story. So, I mean, you're a police officer, what you would expect a police officer does. It details you going to get coffee and things like that. And, I don't think it's over the top yet. Okay, cool. And just to answer Michael's question, have you played Vienna Project at all? So I haven't. So this was one that I got right before I left on my vacation, and I put it into storage. So this is one of those two unplayed games that I have. So it's that one and Midara are the two unplayed games in my library right now. And this is one that as soon as we move into the new place, Michael, I will play, and then I will let you know then. So thanks for asking. Detective is really interesting, though. So if you are any interest in it, Michael, I would recommend you jump onto this one. It's fantastic.
Yeah, cool. So watch this space, Michael. Okay, so that concludes A to Z. So let's move on to our final segment. Oh, not that one. So we're going to talk about what we covered last week in terms of the question of the week, or the last episode even. So the last thing we talked about was actually to do with, if I can remember, your favorite player count. So if you had to choose a preferred player count, I know it's very game dependent. Some games are going to work better too, all that kind of thing. But as a general rule, what would you prefer? Did we answer this question ourselves last time, Mackenzie? Or did we
didn't actually answer this question. We just gave it to the audience. So, Dan, what's your preferred player count?
Okay. So I would say, in general, more often than not, my favorite player count is 3 players. I think if you're watching this, you're probably aware that I tend to really like medium to medium heavyweight Euro games. And I usually find more often than not, 3 players is the sweet spot for me. There's a bit more player interaction. You've got that third wheel in order to interact with, and it's not so head to head. But you still got the succinct play time in terms of not being bogged down too much in terms of downtime, that kind of thing. So 3 players seems to be the sweet spot for me more often than not. But of course, there are hundreds of exceptions. What about yourself?
I completely agree. You said it perfectly. It's that perfect amount of interaction, but also not ridiculous amounts of downtime. Most games play extremely well at 3. Most games are 3 to 4, like 2 to 4 players, right? So I think 3 is ideal. It doesn't overstay its welcome, but it also presents you with a lot of opportunities, and just I think that interaction is huge. Yeah, I think that's what I got to go with. I couldn't say it better than you did. You did great. Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh, interesting. So, okay, yeah, audience, calm down.
Yeah, so it was quite strong in favor of 4 players, which, to be fair, is probably my second choice if I had to choose. But yeah, I know a lot of games work extremely well at 4, and I suppose maybe we play games more often than the average person. I don't know, and I suppose we appreciate uptime. Downtime is something maybe that bothers us a bit more than average. But yeah,
I agree. But I can also see 4-player games being really good, because generally you're going to play with your significant other usually, or maybe a partner of some sort. That's usually what happens if we do have bigger game days. It's usually just my wife and I and 2 other people, and that's usually what happens. So I think that is definitely a thing, right? You're going to bring your partner or your buddy with you and do something. So I think it's good.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So people's favorite is 4 players. Okay, so the question we're going to be asking before the next episode is to do with expansions and how you acquire them, how often you buy them, that kind of thing. So we'll formulate the question around that. So whether that's going to be whether you never buy an expansion for a base game, whether you only buy it for your favorite games, or perhaps you do a lot of research before you decide to buy an expansion, or whether it's just a foregone conclusion and you buy every expansion out for any game that you've got. So that's going to be the question around that kind of lines for the next episode. What's your general rule when it comes to buying expansions?
So I'm really bad. Generally, sometimes I won't even buy a base game if I can't buy all the expansions to it. So I'm very much, if I'm going to get a game, I'm getting everything for it. Because then if it ends up not being good, I can usually sell it as that chunk. And people are usually looking for the whole chunk afterwards. Particularly with Kickstarters, a lot of the times you can just get the all-in and then just sell it all together. And usually that's the way to go. But even with smaller things, like I just recently picked up Aquatica. And I only got it because I saw that it was available with Cold Waters. So I was able to get both at the same time. So I was like, let's do it. We're going to give it a try. Because if it's great, awesome. Now I got more content. A lot of these expansions are usually just more cards or more maps or more missions. So I figured this would be great, because then you just have more content for hopefully a good game. How about you? Is this something that you fall in the trap of? Are you very apprehensive with the new stuff?
I think I've definitely changed in terms of my mentality. A couple of years ago, I would be really keen to acquire expansions. But now I tend to be playing or kind of dipping in and out of games a bit more, maybe only playing them a few times before moving on. So naturally, that's kind of faded away a little bit. If I have something that's tried and tested in my collection for a long time, ones that have stood on my shelves for years, and I know they're a favorite of mine, then I will pick up the expansions pretty much automatically, really. I think maybe that's unnecessary at times, because bad thing is, I personally find that when a game gets bloated and you have too much stuff, then it starts to be quite a big obstacle for me to overcome. I've just recently got that with Teotihuacan. There's so much content for it now, and although I think it's all good, I don't think it's all completely necessary. I would say that, but yeah, more often than not, if it's something that I trust and something that has been on my shelf for a long time, I will look at picking up the expansion. So
we just got an expansion period in for Teotihuacan in particular. Which when you play now that you have everything, which modules do you use? What's your ideal way to play Teotihuacan?
So I would probably always play with the orange temple, or the new temple from the other expansion. I suppose the only thing that I definitely probably wouldn't include is from the newest expansion is that that kind of discovery board where you're traveling from left to right in the different. I don't know the terminology of it. You probably know what I mean. There's so much stuff now. I can't even think about what's in there. I do tend to include most of it, and I kind of tend to. I kind of tend to like to play a certain way where I think's optimal, rather than having just for this game I'll choose this module and this module. From this game I'll choose this module and this module. I don't really play like that. I like to find how I like to play a game and play that way forever.
Totally
almost.
agree with you. Totally agree with you there.
Yeah. So I'd have to think actually. They don't actually spring to mind about which ones I always include, but definitely the temple, the new palace board, from the number 1 tile on Teotihuacan. That one I was probably think I'd include as well because it seems like nothing but an improvement.
Excellent.
Actually, saying kind of contradicting myself, the player powers are something I probably choose to play with sometimes, not other times. So it's a bit of a mishmash really. So I'm yet to find my perfect balance of Teotihuacan.
Interesting. Do you like the obsidian resource at all?
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's so much now, so many different things, it just speeds things up.
Smooths things. That sounds good.
More, I suppose. Yeah, a bit more flexible. Okay, cool. I think that pretty much brings everything to a halt. So anything you want to cover or mention before we wrap things up, Mackenzie?
I don't think anything in particular. Yeah, nothing super crazy. We're almost at 1K subs over at Side Game LLC, and that's really exciting. So we'll be able to do some live stream content from mobile, so that's exciting. And then also put up polls and other things like that. So I'm excited. We're almost able to get more community involvement and engagement over there. So that's really exciting here. So super cool. Things are good over at Side Game.
Brilliant, fantastic. And if you're watching this and you're not aware that Mackenzie's got his own channel, go check out Side Game LLC to help him get to that 1,000 mark. So so thanks for everybody for joining us this week. It's been really nice to get back into the swing of things and to talk about some great games. Have a lot of fun, and hopefully you have too. So next episode will be on Mackenzie's channel for episode 6. So yeah, we'll look forward to that one, and we'll put some notice up so that you know when that's going to happen. All right. So that wraps it up. We'll see everyone next time, and take care. Goodbye.
All right. See ya.